Stanley had to get back to Great Waterton. "I'll blow my whistle one last time," Stanley wished, and he whistled loud and long. This time, Thomas heard the whistle. "It's Stanley," he gasped. With his very last puff and his very last huff, Thomas blew his whistle as loud as he could. Stanley heard Thomas. Quickly, he reversed back to the branch line. "Thomas!" he whistled happily. "Is that you?" Thomas had run out of puff. He couldn't whistle again. He could only wait. Then Thomas saw Stanley chuffing around the bend. "Stanley!" he cried. "I'm very happy to see you." "Thomas!" whistled Stanley. "Where have you been? Did you run away?" "No," tooted Thomas sadly. "I was trying to be a really useful engine." Then Thomas told Stanley all about his adventure in the mine. Stanley was amazed. "Stanley," tooted Thomas, "I'm sorry that I was horrible to you. I was wrong, and I was silly to be cross that you were in charge. I want to be your friend." Stanley smiled. "Thomas," he wished, "we will be friends, and I'll have you back on that track in no time." Soon, Stanley was hooked up to Thomas. Then Stanley huffed and puffed. Thomas was very heavy. There was a lot of water in his firebox. Stanley didn't give up. "I can do it," he wished. And with a mighty heave, Stanley pulled his friend back onto the track. "Hooray!" tooted Thomas. Then there was a very loud crack. The valve in Stanley's boiler had burst. Stanley was a very strong engine, but pulling Thomas had been too much. Now he couldn't move. Stanley felt very sad. "Don't worry," whistled Thomas. "It's my turn to help you. I'll shunt you home." Stanley smiled. Thomas was his new friend. There was nothing Thomas wouldn't do for Stanley. The fireman put Stanley's dry coal into Thomas's firebox. In no time at all, Thomas's boiler was bubbling, and his steam was wheeshing. "Here we go, Stanley," Thomas huffed happily. Stanley smiled back. And puff by puff, Thomas shunted Stanley along the track. It was very hard work. Thomas had to puff up hills and huff through bushes, but Thomas didn't mind. He was proud to push his new friend Stanley home. At last, Thomas and Stanley puffed into Great Waterton. Thomas was tired, but he had never felt happier. Henry, Rocky, Edward and Emily were busy working. They tooted and whistled when they saw Thomas and Stanley, and soon the sound of engines' whistles were echoing around Great Waterton. The news spread throughout Sodor. "Thomas is found!" the small engines cried. The narrow gauge controller beamed with pride. Terence told Harvey, and Harvey told Trevor, "Thomas is home! He's back forever!" Bill told Ben, and Ben told Molly. They cheered and they whistled, they felt so jolly.